So when we think of David Hockney, I think the the images I think of that come to mind first are all of his LA pool artworks, which are fantastic and worthy of spending time with, and kind of all that California light bathing everything. And you see and hear some of the geometry and the shapes that we'll see in the landscapes we're going to talk about, but he definitely is more known for these kind of like wealthy California enclave kind of things, and his obviously his pictures of his dogs, which I have a lot of respect for because I could just paint my dogs and be happy. Um, but in his 70s, he returned home to Yorkshire in England, where he's from, and started painting that world. And I read he was doing up to a painting a day, and he just has created a huge amount. Some more realistic, some much more wild and abstract. And that's what we're going to do tonight is find inspiration in his landscapes, and create our own, geometry and color and all of that. We're going to kind of look at what he did. He often obviously uses a path as a tool for depth, and I think that was just too the landscape he was painting. You could see on these hills it would be fun to visit this actually with these paintings. You could see the paths a lot, but so I highly recommend tonight if you can find a world with a path. This one, although this one's very beautiful, but um, or a trail, I think that would be really fun for you. And he played with this a lot. He really started getting really kind of abstract and playful in it. You could definitely do almost an abstract if you wanted to, or you could stick more traditional. You could lean into the geometry like he did here. You also can take this if you're not interested in the landscape, and he did other things. He did interiors. I love this plant painting, this umbrella. You could definitely take this approach and his attitude and his palette and do objects instead, or an interior if you're not interested in a landscape. Uh, but if you are interested in doing a landscape, I think it's worth looking at what makes a Hockney landscape. So he has he breaks up his world into these graphic shapes, which is super interesting and cool. Often in colors that have nothing to do with what he's looking at, but sometimes they are probably reflecting the colors. And he skews space and perspective and planes, so you get a lot of fun with that. He often uses a limited palette, often kind of some version of complementary colors or maybe a split complementary, and doesn't always stay true to the colors of the world. I suggest you try that. That could be really fun. He plays with brush marks. You'll often see a ton of different variety of strokes and brushes used in one painting. Like, look at how many different brushes he must use there, so distinct. And then within those geometric shapes, he often does patterns to kind of help even further draw the eye back, or just create a sense of a variety of trees or grains or whatever. So for an artist who's heavily, obviously influenced by Hockney, as you will see, is Shara Hughes. She uses, again, it's kind of his more brilliant palettes. She has these same tools of like a variety of brush strokes, these geometric shapes, kind of uncommon uh, color choices, and she also kind of does those panoramas he always does, which would be really fun to try. You could like tape a bunch of pieces of paper together and do that. That could be very cool. But you can see the influence in her work. And yeah, and then Jules de Balancourt, who he's got a lot of the same elements. I'm not sure how inspired he is too, but yeah, he has a lot of the same elements of these blocks of color, super graphic and dynamic worlds he creates. I love this one. Yeah, and he's not strictly a landscape artist, but I think there's a real Hockney and Californian of that era kind of palette that he uses that I think is worth considering. I love this one too. Yvonne Jacquet, she does all of her painting from the aerial view. She like rents Cessnas to take her up and helicopters, so she presents us the world from above. That could be really fun too if you want to do an aerial viewpoint of whatever you want to paint. That is another way. I love this one. I just think it's so good. Yeah, and so I've done that before. It's kind of really fun to change your perspective and imagine what the world looks like that you're sitting at from above. Emily Carr was a Canadian painter, and yeah, she did these also super graphic these great shapes. Her colors are obviously much more realistic, not as fantastical as Hockney, but I think she's also very inspiring and worth looking at. She also painted her dogs all the time. Maybe there's hand in hand with landscape painters and dogs. So what we're going to do tonight is look at a place and do a 5-minute sketch inspired with Hockney in your brain. So this was the image I used. One of my favorite places is where we go for my yearly reading in South Dakota. I did this quick sketch of the road leading up to the place that we rent out every year with all my cousins and stuff. I did a sketch, and then I started thinking about how he might break up the spaces and how he might use brush marks. And in that, I learned a lot about how I wanted that road to look. So then I went to Canvas and I started building out. I wanted the road to be a little bit more like his, are really in the front of the space. And so I changed my sketch to the road is really like my foot's taking that first step right on that pink road. And then I broke that prairie into geometric shapes and I started adding different patterns. And what I found is, while I might not usually paint in this style, what I'm going to use in the future is this idea of the wind always blows there and blowing the grains. That pattern to me is like that. So it was very worthwhile for me, and I hope it is for you too. See you tonight. Bye.